Few things separate the Intellivision Amico more than its unique controllers. They obviously harken back to an era when controllers were a little more straightforward, taking inspiration from the classic Intellivision controller design.
Well, of course, you're talking about Intellivision.
How did you guess?
We don't want anyone to find Amico intimidating, and this can be seen in the controller design. We have a lot of similar features to mobile phones.
Color capacitive touchscreen, speaker, microphone, gyroscope and an accelerometer, force feedback, wireless contact charging.
And what that means is playing with an Amico controller is a very simple experience. It's intuitive, and it elevates the gameplay experience as well.
These are the kinds of things that we created in order to make very unique and simple game design and gameplay experiences.
Anyone, whether they're a hyper-casual gamer or have never gamed in their life, can pick it up and use it, understand it, and have a ton of fun playing with it.
One pressure-sensitive directional input, not three. A pair of action buttons on either side of the device that mirror each other, rather than multiple buttons on the face.
Come on, touch it.
On the shoulders.
Huh? Touch it. I will not touch it.
Behind the shoulders. Now, even triggers on the controller's undercarriage. All mapping differently for different games on different platforms. They've ditched the standard telephone keypad format that designers seem enamored with in the 70s and early 80s. Yay! And the odd early 90s console. Looking at you, Atari Jaguar.
Yo, baby.
In favor of a color touchscreen taking up that 50% of real estate on the controller's face to handle most any special functions, swiping actions, on-screen selections, touch control, or to convey information, hints, or helpful guidance to players. And these controllers have some real goodies baked in. Gyroscopes and accelerometers allow for motion control in the games being made for Intellivision.
The controller can internally sense the orientation you're holding it, similar to your mobile phone, and will adapt the controller to be able to play the game in that way.
And vibrate to provide rumble and haptic feedback. Lighting beneath the 4 action buttons and illuminating the disc feature in the gameplay, assisting players who might need it, be they the youngest in the family or the family relative who's avoided modern controllers. Built-in microphones and speakers bring some of that experience happening on the television to the player, and allow for concept games using the microphone. Orientation may be switched for the player who holds the controller sideways or flipped during play, and some games may utilize this versatility as the anticipated way of holding the controller.
The cool thing to remember about our controllers and how everything is set up is, you know, if I want to play like the old Intellivision games, see how it just switches there? Now I can play, you know, kind of upright, vertical like this, or maybe you're a lefty, you know, and you want to use your left thumb, or you like, you know, using your left thumb like the old school NES or Super Nintendo or Genesis days, where, you know, the thumb was on this way. Or if you prefer it the other way, boom, you switch, and see how instantly, it's instantly. You're not having to do anything except, you know, switch it.
Much like the Wiimote did a decade ago.
The umbrella. Hold the form baton vertically, thumb resting lightly on the button. Through this dance, you channel the quiet dignity of a circus clown in the midst of a thunderstorm.
They've gone to great lengths to centerpiece these controllers, similar in size and shape to a smartphone, and deliberately so, allowing additional mobile phones to sync through the companion app using Bluetooth or Wi-Fi, should others want to play. Guests over for game night? Trip upstate to see the Grands? Family visiting for a holiday? There's no need to buy an additional official controller or 2, or 6. Phones will do in a pinch. This system defines itself by a few means, but its controllers are paramount. Their simplicity, the flexibility, the unique interaction they bring to games. So to create games that do not support the official Intellivision controllers, that require a couple of thumbsticks to navigate or additional buttons for more mapped actions, well, that doesn't make sense. I think this tenet is really stressing how Intellivision won't build games with another control scheme in mind. Don't try to take a standard controller layout game and then require some third-party Hori controller to capture all of those button controls or dual-stick navigations that such games need. And Intellivision CEO Tommy Tallarico's already said, if you insist and want to pair a Microsoft controller or a Google Stadia controller, go for it. But you'll miss out on some of the experience, and certain games are just going to be unplayable. And I think that's indicative. Games for Amico are being designed to accentuate the features of this unique controller.
That was what really attracted us. What could we do with these new input methods? And when the good folks at Amico came to us, they showed us the controller prototype, and by golly, there's a weird little rotatey job on there, and there's an accelerometer in there, and a touchscreen, and the whole thing lights up and stuff. And so we were like, ooh, this is interesting. This kind of harkens back to our roots where we wanted to do cool stuff with the controller and indicate to you what's going on, not only with what's on the television, but also the feedback in the controller. And so the Amico honestly just seemed like a great fit for a new experimental, abstract, wacky rhythm music game that takes us all the way back to our roots. And so we couldn't be more excited to work on Breakout for the Intellivision Amico.
Veering away from the controller just isn't in their interests. However, I can see at least 3 distinct exceptions.
1, 2, 3.
Where the official controller may not get the entirety of the job done for the kinds of games that Intellivision has proposed doing or has alluded to. For one, games that require a spacious drawing surface. Drawing-type party games like Telestrations or Pictionary. Or creative games that allow the player to draw and manipulate some content on screen. Jackbox games where the party mechanic is doodling on an image and voting amongst players who did it best. For these experiences, a tablet may make the most sense. Even a phone connected via Bluetooth is going to give you 100 to 200% more screen surface to maneuver about than the official controller. Now, you could use the screens on the controllers if you had to, though drawing much detail onto that 3.2-inch screen is going to be crowded. It might not be so detrimental if a few special games made the expectation that the player might have a phone or tablet they need for such games. Intellivision would need to be clear on the purchase screen that a mobile device is required. Or maybe they allow a refund or credit for some frustrated portion who purchase Pictionary but don't have the means to play. Companies do that now and again.
I'm sorry.
Maybe that buyer uses a flip phone. Phones and tablets are near ubiquitous, and the central marketing and major premise of the system is the seamless integration of additional devices. Phones, primarily.
Okay, here we go. There you go. We got people using the phones, controllers.
It's pretty easy with all these things on the plan. Get the bonus out.
We may dismiss games on phones and tablets. I mean, touch controls don't register much accuracy. There's no feedback for rapid firing. Too often your fingers are obstructing your view. We're all used to inadvertently tapping, or worse, tapping, but slightly off the control display because we've just missed our placement. Intellivision's aware of these deficiencies with touchscreens, and are factoring it into their game design. It's one of the reasons the disc and shoulder buttons are their primary inputs. Tactile feedback from a button press, from varying pressure, that's meaningful in many situations.
Everything that's on here is also on here. So, but to answer your question, some games are fine on here. Some of the more action games are way better on here, you know. And so we feel that, like, you know, this kind of thing is for people like a game like Jackbox, for example, right? A simple game for grandma. You know, we have a game, for example, where it's super funny, super fun, but all you do is you hit the screen and you talk into it, right? And then you release the button when you're through talking. And that's a game for everybody. Grandma, all you have to do is say, Grandma, hit the screen and talk into it and release it when you're done. Anyone can figure that out, right? So for those type of hyper casual experiences, this is fine. I mean, even a game like Pong, where, you know, you're just sliding your finger up and down to control the thing, you know. So some games are very easy and simple. But for some of the more action games, you know, really you want the pad, you want the controller.
Certain games work within the limits and benefits of touchscreens. Others, not so much. But they're a very familiar method of play to most of the public. So the risk-reward, I think, makes this worth the effort. Another scenario where a game may require some feature not incorporated into the official Intellivision controller, but really benefits a casual audience? Cameras. Either engage during play to give an augmented reality experience for fun party games, or a feature allowing players to place real-life people and things into the game to pique the interest of more casual players. The Amico controllers do not have an embedded camera, but again, your phones do. And there are interesting play directions you could go using a phone as the supplemental device, or even the primary control scheme for a game or a section of a game. Maybe you're a paranormal ghost hunter exploring your living room, and the console and television are giving you clues or setting the mood or giving some indication of where to pan for that next ghostly encounter. And you need to scan the environment for some hint of that ghost when the phone camera is being used within the Amico app. Maybe a game requires the camera before play, or intermittently, to insert a likeness of the players, of pets, or objects collected with snapshots taken when out and about in the real world, a la Pokemon Go. And what about guessing games, where you're given features of an item and the players have to then go find something out in the world that matches the most features based on the clues? It's not a game design that developers are consciously considering on PlayStation or Nintendo, on Xbox or PC. That sort of group experience of bringing these items collected in the real-world environment together onto a shared screen for a shared experience, well, it's not something mobile is particularly well suited to execute either. But casual players understand the concept of a scavenger hunt. They might even enjoy it. And a real-world collectathon can make for some unorthodox results. The making of a fun party game. And it has educational appeal for educators or childcare professionals, the disabilities communities and nursing home operators, who are always searching for peer activities, community inclusion activities, and ways to build gross motor or cognitive exercises. You know, the community actively buying Wiis to this day? Or how about a cardboard cutout adventure with roughly cut objects or family members and guests' faces being imposed on multiple enemies or players within the game? Or maybe that snapshot you took of Grandma to superimpose as the end boss at the end of level 2? Makes for an entertaining experience. You telling me that's not gonna bring some family members into the living room? Maybe play around? That has no interest for kids? Maybe it's a guessing game that scrambles or distorts the image, and there's an experience just in that. Take the classic sliding tile puzzle game that many of us are familiar with, as inexpensive stocking stuffers, Hanukkah gifts, party favors. The premise gets sometimes used as a puzzle in a larger game, but the game itself gets relegated to simple phone app games today, if you even come across them. Like all things inundated in these app stores, discoverability is the death of these little games, whether good ideas or repetitive ones, well-crafted or cash grabs. All of these games depend on going viral. But if you take something as simple as the sliding puzzle, and you incorporate photos you could take, it's just one gimmick. And yeah, a gimmick that might get someone to take pause and think it over. You put that simple game on a television in front of a group, and you give everyone controllers or phones very much suited to the swiping and navigating of the game board on the touchscreen, and you're at the starting point of a group play experience that hasn't been done before. In a cooperative mode, multiple players could share the same board. They could have special abilities on their own screens and have to work together. Maybe certain players can only slide up and down, maybe others only left and right. And there's a time objective, so it's possible to have a score or beat your time, so there's replay value baked in there. Half the game's experience is going to be trying to coordinate with your teammates. You add enemies who might undermine your team's progress. Maybe they move or flip random tiles, block your progress and obstacles. Maybe scramble whole rows or columns like the green hopping characters Sam and Slick and Hubert, who undo the work of the player until caught or forced off the grid. Maybe several players can work together, with some players having the ability to swap two tiles. Maybe there are color-coded borders on the tiles that dictate a global event to all of the tiles of that color. Or your controller's color-coded, and you can only do certain effects on tiles that share your controller's color.
We have a lot of LEDs in the console, and we're dealing with a lot of colors, and it was really important for us to be able to blend these in really interesting ways that correlate to the gameplay or that indicate really interesting things to the user.
We also have interactive lighting in some of the games as well. So, you'll be having to look on the actual base of the machine and dial in different colors on the LEDs in order to get through certain areas or to unlock certain chests or, keys or doorways.
Maybe you can place decoys to lure enemies, block their paths, or destroy them. What about a reservoir to move a problematic tile out of the grid, maybe for a short amount of time before it forces its way back on? A sliding tile power play? Or what about freezing tiles in place to prevent them from being moved? Or even special abilities like Hail Marys to re-scramble the entire board, or a special ability that inverts a particular row or column. Or maybe cooperative mode isn't simultaneous, but it's a relay, and you tag in and tag out as teammates, and the work you do and the tools unique to you can actually help you set up opportunities for the next player. In a competitive mode, perhaps there are 2 puzzles on a split screen, but rather as simply acting as 2 separate puzzles, 2 separate views, that border between the 2 is actually a zone where you could push pieces or set traps or sabotage the other team. Or maybe someone on your team is actually a saboteur, and part of the game is trying to figure out who it is and stopping them in your race to complete the puzzle. Look, I know when I said sliding tile puzzle game, a lot of people are going to roll their eyes. But in a lot of these older games, lie opportunity if you just think about them creatively. And AAA publishers don't have the time or resources to do a lot of that. Nintendo or Sony or Microsoft don't often take those kinds of risks. Yes, they can put out a 51 Clubhouse games, but they're not looking at that as their opportunity to change games, to reimagine things. At its core, this is a classic game design familiar to most, and while phone apps might be a place where we see experimentation with some of these additional features, putting them together on a television, moving the play away from a solitary phone experience to one where people play against or with one another, well, that creates a fun time from a pretty mundane game design mechanic, honestly not getting looked at by most developers or publishers. Lastly, the third scenario where I truly do see some types of games not fully supported by the official Intellivision controller, but key to what Intellivision's trying to do. Intellivision has an entire category of games that we have seen almost no reveal or discussion of yet. Health, mind, and fitness. Your Amico comes with 2 versatile controllers, but they're rather expensive devices that do a lot. Multiple buttons, that centerpiece screen and disc. They have about 12 LEDs operating in sync. They're RFID enabled. They feature rumble, a speaker, a microphone. They've got an abundance of bells and whistles that are baked in, and it isn't all necessary for all styles of play. So, if you were to isolate certain elements of the controllers for select kinds of games that don't need the whole enchilada, but really just relayed a couple inputs or honed in on select features, you could create much less expensive peripherals that would function as accessories in lieu of or with the official controller. Like wearable technology. Consider all the praise in the world delivered to Nintendo here for thinking differently about Ring Fit Adventure. It's an evolution of the Wii Fit, but with better gamification for that audience. What if you took that Intellivision controller, stripped it of its expensive capacitive screen, its 12 LEDs, the disc, the buttons, removed the microphone, the speaker, you could even use a cheaper processor and board, and just focus on the accelerometer, the gyroscopes, maybe rumble and tracking via Bluetooth, and you had a sensor that communicated position relative to other devices. Maybe you keep 1-2 LEDs. Then the cost on such a set of peripherals would have to be a good deal under the cost of the additional controllers, which could open up the possibilities of how you'd interpret motion play and fitness, and what mechanics could be incorporated into a game without trying then to shoehorn a fitness game through putting an entire controller in your pocket, or trying to detect movement by stepping on and off a balance board. There's potentially very fluid motion control here that would be the natural evolution of the Wii and Wii Fit, Wii Sports, the best of Kinect, and their legacy. And if you think about the direction of fitness games and their popularity, where we had the Wii Fit and Wii Balance Board, skateboards, and tons of peripherals, all of which did sell, but make for chunky collectibles today, and were more often than not simply hunks of plastic to set a controller in. I could see the value and potential appeal in selling an expansion set of essentially wearable tech sensors, a dumbed-down consortium of Fitbits. Today, you can even capture control inputs from conductive tattoos, 3D printed, affordable, and pretty well compatible with the simple gameplay premises that Amico has centerpieced. These probably have limited functionality on games on a PlayStation, a Switch, or an Xbox. And while it could be a fascinating oddity if they chose to pursue it, that game is going to need several million in marketing just to stand out. But for Intellivision, with its low-cost development and spotlight approach, if certain edutainment games only focus on a few inputs, then selling an inexpensive printable controller tattoo isn't a stretch. It's something that may actually appeal to those younger kids they're including in their focus. Care Bears playable by swiping in a direction on the separately sold pack of belly badge tattoos? Yeah, I'll buy a separately sold 5-pack for that novelty experience. Thanks. My kids would love that. And I kinda wouldn't mind trying it out either. Amico is no powerhouse. It doesn't have to be.
It doesn't matter what kind of chip we have in the system. It doesn't matter, because the type of games that we're doing, don't think of us as like a graphic powerhouse. Now, are there things on the machine that you're going to see that no one's has done before visually? Yes, but that's not what we're about, and that's not what we're, and it's not every game. That's not what we're about. We're about simple, affordable, family fun. So
these aren't the design principles of other systems. And you know who might find value in a system that works in fitness or dance routines? Casuals. An expansion set of 6 little devices with adjustable straps could enable a person or a group to engage in group fitness routines.
You ready? Now find that beat. There it is. Oh yeah, that's good. Release, contract, release, contract, release. There you go. Smiling, smiling, smiling. Now to the pelvis. Front, back, push it, pull it, push it, pull it. Yeah, there you go. Now your favorite thing, the hips, sugar. Come on and shake that cute little booty of yours. Ow! Ha! Yeah.
Motion sensing technology to relay moves for karate, skiing, cycling, running, skateboarding, rock climbing, kickboxing, dance, and cheer. There is a lot of possibility and flexibility there for very little additional customer cost, in a system that is built to exemplify such tasks. Remember, the initial premise behind the Intellivision Amico was that the Wii was onto something with these motion and casual focused games, but they drifted back to their Nintendo base.
Here's the thing to consider. If there are 200 million hardcore gamers in the world, okay? If you add up PlayStation 4, Xbox, separate, PlayStation 4 owners, Xbox owners, Switch owners, and then you add in their PC and Mac, that's 200 million people who consider themselves hardcore gamers, right?
Yeah.
There's 3 billion people that play mobile games every day.
Yeah.
Okay? And so our thing is, Nintendo, for the most part, still goes for those hardcore gamers. Nintendo does what they do great, right? They, when the Wii came out, keep in mind that they went right back to their wheelhouse when the Wii came out, right? They went to Smash Brothers and Pikmin and Mario and Metroid and Zelda and Pokemon. That's what they're great at, right? That's what they're best at. And if you look at their history, they only started to get into the mobile casual space only a couple years ago, right?
Yeah.
Very, very late. And the reason for that is that Nintendo isn't focused on casual gamers. Nintendo, the great company that they are focused on the Nintendo people who grew up in the 80s and 90s, and they admit it.
Well, they made us gamers, and they want to stay with that audience, and they want to respect that audience. But they are making more money off of their mobile stuff than they are their console stuff, and they could keep turning those widgets and
what does that tell you, right? But the reality is this: is that if you think about the Switch, it's not targeted to grandparents, is it?
Right.
And when you turn the Switch on, if you were to buy a Switch for a non-gamer, somebody who's never played a game before, and you buy them a Switch and have them take it out of the box and hook it up and then go into this and go into that and go into the setting, it's a much different experience. It's not what the Wii was being sold to nursing homes, right?
Yeah.
My mom bought a Wii. She's 78 years old now, right? She bought 2 video game consoles her whole life. Christmas of 1980, she bought an Intellivision, and Christmas of 2006, she bought herself a Wii.
Right.
We're not seeing that same thing. It's not. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the Switch. My God, Zelda Breath of the Wild. Are you kidding me? It was unbelievable, right? But my mom's not playing Zelda Breath of the Wild.
Right.
She's not playing. She's not playing Zelda. She's not playing Pokemon. She's not playing Smash Brothers. And even if you look at Mario Kart, that's become a difficult game now for somebody who's never played a video game.
Right.
So that's the big differentiator, is that the Switch, if you compare the Wii to the Switch, they're 2 very different machines with 2 very different customers.
Well,
right?
let's go down this for a second here, because the Wii, as successful a machine as it was, had a tough time getting traction with publishers.
That's
because
right.
they were playing in the traditional console space.
That's right.
And people were buying it, but they never really wanted to buy another game other than Wii Sports. That was the pack-in game with the machine.
And that's because Nintendo didn't really go for that audience. People, and I know a lot of folks who worked at Nintendo during that time. Well, a lot of them work for us now, but they were telling the Japanese offices, please, nursing homes are buying this. Let's do card games. Let's do shuffleboard. Let's do, pool and darts and croquet. Let's do those type of games. And Nintendo is like, look, it's not what we do. That's not what we do.
Right.
And then when the companies, all the third-party companies, are trying to do, kind of gimmicky, motion control games that were basically a bunch of shovelware. So the companies,
which we reviewed.
Well, a lot of which we reviewed, Chicken Shoot. So that's my point, though, is that never in the entire video game industry have casual gamers been targeted for a home video game console.
Except back in the 80s when it was a lot of backgammon and circus and combat
because there was no such thing as a gamer when we were growing up.
Yeah.
It was a different time, and
so
that's what we're bringing back.
Do you take inspiration then from the console like the diehard gamers out there that are incredibly skeptical? Do you does that kind of fuel you?
I mean, here's the thing: is that the console isn't targeted for them, right? Again, 200 million hardcore gamers, 3 billion casual gamers, right? Now, that's not to say that because all of us in the office are all hardcore gamers. All of us in the office have literally worked on the greatest video games of our generation, right? So we know what makes a great game, and we're all hardcore gamers. And I got to tell you, there's a whole bunch of games that we love as well too. So I think, I don't think that the Amico is going to replace somebody getting a PlayStation 5, a hardcore gamer, right?
Okay.
A hardcore.
So we're not making that prediction today.
not for the hardcore gamers. For those 200 million, they're not going to go, you know what? I'm going to buy an Amico instead of the next Xbox. That's not going to happen. We're not there to replace that.
Right.
For those 200 million hardcores. But what we're doing is we're going to come in and we're going to be an additional thing, because when their non-gaming girlfriends come over, or when their non-gaming family members come over, or when their 10-year-old niece comes over, they're not playing Xbox hardcore gamers with those people because they can't. because of the way the controls are set up, because of, and again, I'm generalizing, but I'm saying, the majority of.
Intellivision's been signaling all along how it wants to pick up that mantle and not only move in that direction, but double down on it. And why stop at fitness? Remember those wee plastic rackets and golf clubs, bowling balls, and hunks of plastic that I just dismissed? Well, no need to throw the baby accessories out with the bathwater. The concept there was fine, just inundated and not particularly necessary for most of those experiences. But let's take one of those controllers, with its big, pressure-sensitive, capacitive touchscreen, and then clasp that controller in a small housing that fits 6 cords that could clamp down to rest just across the controller's face. You could also place that housing cradle into a basic tray that slides up and down the neck of a plastic guitar, an entire guitar prop accessory that is little more than half a dozen plastic components and rubberized strings in that housing. Remember, the Amico controller's doing all the work. Its accelerometer still captures positions as you slide along each fret. Those finger positions for chords on those rubberized strings, all being captured by the touchscreen. Pair that with one inexpensive motion sensor that attaches to a wrist strap. Or maybe a separately sold oversized guitar pick, within it being a small sensor and a transmitter that sends limited information relaying speed and up and down strumming motions. Little more. Back to that controller or back to the Amico. And you've not only created potentially the coolest air guitar setup for a new wave of Guitar Hero or Rock Band games, but you could actually use that controller that wasn't just a tiny plastic guitar with 4 colorful buttons to actually teach guitar chords and finger positioning at a fraction of the cost of a real guitar. You think a touring musician isn't considering how to incorporate music into this system? You don't see the potential value in such a machine? The same principles can be applied to yoga, to cheer, and dance routines. How much more interesting does a Just Dance or a Dance Dance Revolution get if you're designing to an audience using wearable technology, not just haphazardly waving about a Wii baton or stepping on the cardinal directions of a rollout dance pad? If only Intellivision had a former Dance Dance Revolution producer who could reach out to his connections.
Hello everyone, I'm Jason Enos, Vice President of Production of Intellivision, coming at you from the San Francisco Bay Area.
Oh wait. And you know what? Let's talk about adventure games. The Wii was ultimately hampered by a library of shovelware with little care for quality, and lots of publishers who came on late to that gold rush, with tacked-on control mechanics and little adjustments to games they made elsewhere. Few were really thinking about how to best institute motion control. And for those who did, well, they actually made some really fun games, especially first party, where the concepts were competently handled by developers understanding the principles and potential of motion control. They just moved on from the casual market and back to the vocal, very loyal, and dependable gamer-identifying market. I'm not naive. I know there's going to be the argument that motion control and the dance rhythm genre died out because they were gimmicks. But I am going to push back and suggest that it might be more the case that we were just inundated with cheap shovelware and undersupported by standout, highly marketed games. The original Wii remote didn't even come with a gyroscope for years. You had to buy a separate accessory later on in its lifespan. Most people playing the Wii never used that optimized Wii remote. It should go without saying that the tech was more primitive, still very new, and the experience often frustrating when it wasn't executed well. But when it did, there is a lot of fun to be had. And we're 15 years later. The mid-2000s newish IR-based motion control tech, well, that can be better captured, player intent better calibrated, by Intellivision's large development team. who understand the premise and what motion control needs to deliver. They're working with developers on these second-party games in-house and building the relationships with trusted third-party developers who actually get what they're trying to do and have good ideas about motion control.
Intellivision is like a big family. It's all about working together on great games. They always have a clear vision on their mind, but still us as developers, we have a lot of creative freedom. That balance really helps us on focus what's fun.
When we first heard about the planned revival of the whole Intellivision brand and the planned launch of the Amico console, we have been quite excited. Being a part of the whole revival of Intellivision's spirit in the year of 2020 is a great honor for me and my whole team.
It's the spirit behind the Amico. You can just feel that something great is going to happen. It's so exciting.
It's really unbelievable to work with the Intellivision team. I'm really proud to be part of this legendary rebirth.
We're always looking to bring players something new and exciting, and the Amico is the platform that allows us to do that.
They support their developers really well. Anytime we've had questions about the platform, we've gotten fast, personalized attention from their team, and their developer requirements are so much easier to work with than other platforms we've made games for in the past.
You feel that the people that are working at Intellivision on this project, on the Amico, are very passionate about the project.
Intellivision has so much passion for gaming and respect for the product. It's a very strong team that puts the product first and everything else second.
Working together with such a big team of industry veterans on a new console while having the opportunity to work on great IP such as Moon Patrol and put a modern spin on it, it's just like a dream come true for us.
So, if Intellivision wants to make adventure games where a couple strapped accessories lets the game know a punch is an attack, a leg lift is a block, or the other arm used can be a block, then a jump can be an actual jump. Running in place in one direction or the other can move you left or right. Two hands waving climbs a ladder. What do you think that does to a game like Burger Time or Pitfall? What does that look like on Amico using motion control to play? Does that open up any interest to an outsider looking in? It definitely adds an interactive method missing from most of these games that have, at the very least, a curiosity factor, and make for some entertaining time of watching or joining in for group play. They do kind of feel like they're more integral to the nature of the system and aren't seen as some tacked-on afterthought like some past accessories have been on prior systems. And here's the kicker. What senior center, church, synagogue, mosque, or youth activity program is going to purchase 8 Switches or 4 Switches with lots of extra Joy-Cons? When Intellivision's making the sort of experience, motion-controlled recreational games and unique activities, its centerpiece. What school or aftercare program is going to look at Amico and say, no, this whole physical fitness, brainy games, edutainment, all under a family-friendly, no teen-rated content and up banner? That's not going to work for us. And I'm going to go out on a limb from my conversations in the gaming community, but I don't think many people even factor in that there exists a separate industry of demand that's driven by educational and human services sectors. It's a market buying unsupported, refurbished Wii systems in bulk, at premiums, and the nature of their grants and funding means they can't buy them used on Facebook Marketplace. But these are consumer electronics getting old in the tooth. They're a little more finicky, a little more prone to failure, with older games where design ended 12, 15 years ago. You can't sell 15, 20, 25-year-old refurbished Wiis to institutions and facilities forever. Which is why I'm so confident Amico's a solution that many are looking for, but don't quite know how to formulate it because they don't know of anything comparable out there on the market.
The possibilities are endless.
And Intellivision recognizes that market. Clearly, there's no room for Intellivision. So yeah, I can see different avenues in pursuing controller schemes beyond the official controllers. Accessories or controller alternatives that add these much coveted and less traveled play options. Really inventive play mechanics that are emerging in other sectors, hidden away on mobile. Some of these inventive applications deserve so much more exposure. And Intellivision is a platform positioned to do that, all without veering much from the company's mission statement.
We wanted to create something that personified what Intellivision and our messaging is all about. Something that was exciting and unique and fun.
And they can do this without pricing in expensive cameras or bigger screens or supplemental accessories on their controllers or sold with each unit. And it's not much of an ask to the consumer. Now, are you going to upset an audience because these accessories weren't included in the initial purchase? No. We're consumers. We understand how buying things work. And it's not like this system's being sold piecemeal. But the expandable directions, the options that then open up with just a modest expansion of what's expected of an audience to bring to the table, or an inexpensive accessory purchase, well, those are kind of intriguing of where the Amico might go.
Move your boogie body. Come on and shake those hips. Move that boogie body. Yeah! It's okay, move that boogie body. Come on, take it up, take it up, take it down, take it down, take it up, take it up, take it down, take it down. Get out. Now here we go to circle them. Oh, we're here to let you know. Well, if you want a boogie, get down on the dance floor. Let's go. Ha, ha. Ow. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Book it, Dano. Second commandment completed. If you haven't caught the episode of Amico All Access and are up for a lively discussion on all 10 commandments in the series, then this episode, all episodes in this series, I guess, comes with a solid recommendation to check them out. Go click on some channels. There are a lot of inquisitive people there who make good points, day in, day out. For the Retro Advisory Board, I want to thank you for watching. Until the next video.